that's going to say, "You ready?" We got a lot to do tonight. We got a lot to cover.
We do have a lot to cover. You put a lot of extra stuff on our plate. I was planning just to have like an easy throw a bunch of stuff in the oven and be done with it.
We got to maximize the time, man.
Okay, well we can go.
Got a lot of cooking to do. Got a lot of things to talk about.
Welcome back, y'all. Garth, it's beautiful Amy here. I do want to give her a bunch of kudos. This is her vision. I say it all the time. I chop onions and potatoes and put the right amount of salt in and a lot more butter. And she does all the orchestrating. She's the one that has a vision for kitchen and detail and layout, and she's the one that really wanted to make this entire Facebook Live happen. And so all I have to do is cook things, give y'all some tips, and watch out for the tip of the hood as it's located really close to a dangerous part of my head.
If you go back and watch class session number 1, you will see
blood.
A catastrophe.
And not from any steaks.
Hey, but that's what keeps it real, man. We gotta keep it real. Hey, we're glad y'all are here tonight. Hope you grabbed your little drinky drink or your little iced tea and you're gonna sit with us for just a little bit, because I thought tonight would be a really good time to address a lot of the questions that mainly Garth gets about what's going on in the kitchen. How do I do this? Which utensils should I use for that? Which pan? Blah, blah, blah. And I felt like since we were going to do all of this in 4 weeks, one of these classes needed to be about a Q&A and about addressing the big questions. So we'll have a lot more, I know, as time goes on. But the ones tonight, I felt like are the biggest questions that we get. And also I just want to mention at the end, if you'll hang with us, we're going to do a live Q&A. Your culinary questions, not your when are you getting married questions. So,
why are you throwing that? Oh my gosh.
Because I think inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, especially the one to my right.
But anyway,
left.
So we want to talk about questions in the kitchen and things that are, coming to your mind as well.
Gosh.
Are you blushing?
No, I'm chopping.
I figured out how to make him blush. All right, man.
I'm chopping.
Now I know.
I am chopping and more chopping.
Okay, and in all seriousness, the last 3 weeks we've covered some really good recipes. How to make a great hamburger on the weeknight. Some good sauce to go on top of that hamburger, and the skillet potatoes, if you remember that. If you missed that, you can still go back and watch it. It's
Quick
there.
tips on how to get a fast sear using cocoa powder on that one. That was kind of fun.
Yes,
a lot of people
yes.
don't know about
And then
it.
last week we did that awesome, one of my very favorite things that Garth ever makes is all Asian cuisine, and he did the Asian shrimp wraps.
Shrimp wraps, the veggies.
And then he did the brisket fried rice, which I call it the
Veggies,
Texas fried rice because it just had all the good Texas stuff in it.
And little tips on how to get that crispy browning on the rice.
So
It makes
that's
such a big difference.
True, and so that's our endeavor, is to keep pushing awesome, great recipes that are approachable at home. Because look, I'm a home cook. I've been cooking at home since I was 19 years old. Garth's been a chef for a long time. He's got far more experience as far as professional experience than I do, and probably you as well.
And a lot of wine tasting experience.
But I've learned a lot from him. And I've learned a lot from myself, just trial and error. So I feel like sharing that knowledge with y'all is key, especially as we're getting into the end of the year, where I have a feeling we might be home a little bit more again. That's just my personal thought on the whole thing. So we're going to be cooking a lot more at home. And I feel like staying connected with y'all virtually is the best idea. So,
For sure.
All right, enough of all the business talk. We want to get straight to the point. While he's cooking tonight, if you do have questions, go ahead and just submit them here. I'm going to be reading online while Garth's talking and cooking. So when we get to the end, we'll have the Q&A, and we will definitely address the questions, okay?
And
All right.
that's something we're learning from y'all. Like, what are y'all wanting? How are we adapting?
Yes.
And what are some different styles to just us cooking? Y'all getting some tips and tricks to y'all getting more involved. So
Yes.
what I've done right now is I was just dicing the sweet potato very loudly as the marriage plan conversation came up. I added that to our moving forward to the butternut squash. I will say, if you're just cooking on a Wednesday night, buy the already cut butternut squash. I'm all about fresh. I love fresh foods. I can tell you, you're not going to notice a huge difference on a starchy vegetable like a squash, whether you're buying it like this, pretty large piece, rolls, it's hard to break down. And how many of y'all have ever cooked butternut squash and you finish cooking and your hands are literally, they're caked, they're coated, and they've turned like a bright yellow or bright orange. So we'll look at the reviews on that, the responses later. But the reason for that is that squash is self-healing. So if it developed a cut while it was growing, it actually creates its own Band-Aid. While when you cut into the squash, it's creating that giant squash Band-Aid on your fingers. And it'll stick to them. Some people blister from it. They get like a contact dermatitis. So if that's the case for you, use gloves. Or just buy the stuff that's already diced. You won't see a big difference. And then we've got some fresh sweet potatoes, peeled those. Little different approach to the onion cutting this time. So normally you'll see me dice it, where I cut down, 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 and then across. Here we're doing some big pieces. We want some big chunks. So we're going to roast this all together in the oven. And if you have convection, we're going to use convection. And so here's how I cut it, a little different. And this is actually a conversation I just had with my dad last weekend. He was like, well, what do you think of this technique? So I hadn't done it in forever, but it makes sense. So rather than trying to make squares out of something that's a half circle, I'm going to cut in angles and create basically continuous triangles through here. And so then there'll be a much more consistent size. So we'll cut once there, down the center, once on the side. And so now it's separated into 4 pieces. Now I'm just going to cut across 2 times big, 1 time small. And now I've got these big, consistent, even-sized chunks. I know you're so used to my normal onion chopping. I'm sure you were a little surprised. It's a new one.
I'm entertained tonight. This is awesome.
All right, bell pepper. Did this one last time. We had some people say, can you do it again a little slower? So we take the bell pepper, go to the bottom of it. We cut the bottom off. I'll still use this. I'll take a look and see, is there a bunch of white in there? There's a little bit, so I might cut out a couple little portions of the white, put those off to the side for Amy's compost bin. I don't know.
Do I have a compost?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
We have chickens, they eat everything.
All right, so we've got the bottom cut open like this. I'm going to put on the cutting board, and I'm going to cut down. And so now I'm laying it flat, and I'm just going to continue to unroll it. So we do this with the poblano for the fried rice. All the seeds are right here. They're not on your floor. Your dog doesn't get to enjoy them. Toss those, and now we've got just the white portion. I'm sorry, we've got just the red portion. Try to cut out as much white as possible, but if I missed any, I can just go back across, take that off, and now we're just going to cut some big chunks of the red bell pepper.
Such confidence.
Oh, that's because I've missed a time or two, lost a fingertip or two, and then finally got back to the point.
I cut my finger with that knife today, and I'm still sorry.
All you know is look at it, right?
No, I picked it up and I just did it the wrong way.
A lot of people actually cut themselves more often washing the knives than actually cutting with them.
I wasn't washing, but anyhow, carry on.
So you're leaving that for me.
Yeah.
So we're gonna add some oil. This is what place you could use extra virgin olive oil if you want to. I notice when it cooks for that long, you lose a lot of the fragrance, so you're paying a lot of extra money for the extra virgin olive oil. So again, grapeseed, corn, avocado oil. Actually, we'll toss that first. By tossing it first with the oil, I'm getting all those vegetables nice and moist. And that's going to allow our salt to stick. Kosher sea salt, 50% less sodium by volume. So Amy's about to say that looks like too much salt.
My hands are going to swell in the morning.
That'll help keep that engagement ring on. All right, so we're going to toss this.
Good one, honey.
That's it
Good
too.
one.
So much so that I want you to use our pepper grinder.
You just dropped it into the food.
Actually, you weren't holding it.
That's what I said. I dropped it.
Oh, you dropped it. Okay.
Why you got to get such a big old grinder?
Use freshly ground pepper at the very
I
least.
think you're out of pepper over
If
here.
you hadn't bought that one, this one at the grocery store works just fine.
You don't like my job, I see.
I just think it's kind of ironic. You with that one, me with this one. All right, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Let's toss it.
There's my workout for the day.
A little something different. If you go and Google a bunch of recipes online, you're probably going to see a lot of the same ingredients. What I like to add is a little bit of acidity. I think it balances out just this rich, like nutty, earthy sort of flavor from the squash and the sweet potato. And it'll also add a little sugar. So I'm using some apple cider vinegar. Not very much, maybe a teaspoon or two for that entire sweet potato and that package of squash. Toss it.
All right.
All right, and so lay this out here. It's going to go into our oven, and this is where we're talking about convection tonight. I'm using 400 degrees on convection. What is convection?
Yes.
If you have it, it means there's a fan in the back of the oven that's moving the air across the fan where there's a heating element behind it, typically. At the very least, if it says convection, there's at least a fan back there, and that's going to move the air around so you don't have hot and cold spots, meaning that normally on bake, the heat comes from the bottom. So that kind of restricts airflow. And if we've got cold food here, the roasted vegetables or chicken or something else, we've got cold spots. But if I have a fan moving all this air around, it creates even heat throughout the entire oven cavity, and the temperature becomes very accurate. So now I don't need to rotate, change the rack, all that. Instead, I can just put in this, can also put in the best way we cook our bacon, right, baby?
Yes.
In the oven. It'll get perfectly crisp. It won't make a mess. We can ball up that aluminum foil and parchment paper.
Hallelujah.
And it's cooked very even and not all like swirly and stretched out. And then at the very end, we put in some Texas pecans. And we're going to add that to our vegetable mix. It's going to be kind of like a roasted sweet potato butternut squash
I call
bacon
it
hash.
Hello, fall.
Hello, fall. I mean, now that it's what, 74 degrees, it's like, whew, it's fall weather for sure. So here in Dallas, at least, if you're from another city, you might be a lot
folks
colder.
joining us from Florida and some other little places.
So I tell you what, babe, if you'll put those two in the top oven and then grab.
But tell them about convection. You always got to go 25 degrees. Okay. You know.
So here's the deal on convection. I don't typically change the temperature. I just shorten the time. The exception being baked goods. If you're doing cookies, if you're doing a souffle, if you're doing other like baked breads, those sort of things, we want to drop the temperature by about 25 degrees. On vegetables, chicken, fish, meats, don't drop the temperature. It'll caramelize perfectly. You won't have to rotate the trays, change the racks that they're on. They're going to turn out fantastic. And perfect. So if you'll move that one over here.
Is this what you want?
Yeah, why don't you put that?
Okay.
So why are you using convection? It's that, and in the lower oven I've got
Okay.
two of the others for sure, one of the others.
Okay.
Is that I've got all these vegetables roasting, I've got bacon cooking, and I've got pecans at the very end for about 6 to 8 minutes cooking as well. Perfect. Why don't you put that down here, sweetheart?
Okay.
And it's all being done at once. I didn't have to go check on it, toss it, move it, anything else. So if you have convection, oh, and that's our bacon. Yeah, why don't you set it right on there? If you have it, use it. If you don't, rotate, change the racks, the trays, and so forth, and then call me when it's time to replace your oven, because at Gerald Company, where I also sell appliances, we sell lots of ovens, including very reasonably priced ones that have convection that will really make your cooking shine, give you the confidence to know that you're going to have an amazing meal every time. So that's what's happening here. So we roasted those off. The squash and sweet potato took about 30 minutes, depending on how much caramelization you want. The bacon took about 20 minutes, so I pulled it out sooner to take the grease off of it, and so now it's just super crunchy. It just comes apart. So, and I didn't have the big mess from doing it in a pan, and I didn't have the shame of doing it in the microwave. But no problem if you do it in the microwave, because someone else, here, I need to wash my hands, now I touch my nose,
I saw that.
uses the microwave quite a bit.
But I do like the bacon. Somebody asked how you do the bacon. I think we've already answered that question. He's answered that question. But we will go back
About
to
20
questions.
minutes.
20 minutes?
At 400 degrees on convection. If you don't have convection, I'd bump it up to say 415 or 425.
And I like that they cut. Oh, shoot. I almost dropped it. I like that they come out kind of flat. So it's more like, I don't know, not as, you know, we talked about that today about.
Would you like to call food jiggly?
You know, like wiggly.
Oh.
Wiggly.
That's totally different from jiggly. Sorry, I apologize, sweetheart. Whoa.
I've only had a half a glass of wine. I really
Same
promise.
here. Same here.
Anyhow, the microwave's awesome, but it makes them jiggly, and when you do them in the oven, it makes them unjiggly, flat. Okay, carry on. Never mind.
Oh, that was fantastic. All right, here's the other cool thing about using the foil and parchment on the sheet tray. Y'all couldn't see that.
That is so pretty too.
I take the foil and parchment. It's hot, but not when I'm touching just the foil. So I'm just trying not to touch the tray. So now I'm taking all that and I'm shaking it up. I'm not having to worry about tearing the parchment paper, making a mess, or smashing into the squash and sweet potato. So instead, we're kind of pouring that out
Nice.
right here.
Yum. Hello, fall.
Oh, fall.
And I'll throw that away. Ha! Cleanup is done.
All right, we're putting some bacon in. I like big chunks, so you know that you're having some freshly cooked bacon. So we'll just break that into pieces. Want to add some pecans to this. You don't have to, but
Yes.
we love our
If we didn't
friends.
have pecans, what else would you use?
You can use any nut you want, or just skip it all together. Honestly, it's not.
No, you can't skip the nuts. The world needs nuts.
Hey, you want to make it Italian style? I'm not gonna even touch that one. If you want to make it, this is like the core, and that's the one thing we like to teach. Is like this is the core. In that convection oven, could you have substituted prosciutto instead of bacon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you put in kale, like leaves of kale that you brush with olive oil? And now you don't have to have the bacon. You could have a vegetarian style
Good idea.
and get crispy kale in there. Or do the shiitake mushrooms that we do that taste like bacon that get all crunchy. All those things can happen. And so what we're really trying to encourage y'all to do is, sure, follow the recipe the first time, but use it as inspiration.
Yeah.
And then take a spin on it and make it your own the next few times you give it a shot. So that's going to stay warm for a while we get ready with our eggs.
Okay, what can I do?
Let's see here. So timing for all this is a little difficult. So what I did, if you're making food for a larger group, is I already did some fried eggs ahead of time. They were put on a sheet tray. If you want to grab those,
Yep.
with foil and parchment. And this is a difference when we talk about ovens on keeping something warm. That's good for like braised dishes, casseroles, things like that, versus flashing something to warm it back up. So this tray, it's not going to overcook. We've got bacon, nuts, and squash. And so if you want to put this in the lower oven, sweetheart, we've just got it warm. So that's just going to stay warm. For flashing something, if I were to keep these eggs that I had just done the fried egg or over easy egg, if I put those on keep warm, they're going to cook. And you're not going to get the runny yolk if that's something you want. But it's hard to get 4 eggs done at one time. So what we do is we do them in batches, put them on the sheet tray, and this is when we start talking about pots and pans. But before I get into that, I want to wrap up the convection side, because to me convection is about, it's not about what can you use it for, what should you not use it for. It's not what you think. We did a test scene at Sub-Zero Wolf. When I say we, there were food testers and a whole bunch of people, and I was executive chef for the South Central region at Sub-Zero Wolf Appliance Company, did a lot of testing. Souffles were fine in there. Breads were great in there. Cookies, delicious in there. But the only things that didn't work were custards. Anything like cheesecake, a creme brulee custard, anything real heavy egg-based, use a steam oven, use a water bath, a bain-marie, use one of those because you need to protect it and have it at a lower heat, don't have convection on. And then quick breads, and that's kind of up your alley, like a banana bread. Really up your alley. Don't use it on those because it will sear the top before it gets to rise off.
I've been doing that this whole time.
Is that why I haven't been as crazy about your banana breads? So I don't know why wedding planning suddenly sounds more appealing to talk about than my discussion on your cooking.
Oh, anywho, well, thank you for sharing that nugget of truth. I will not be using the convection oven anymore on my bread. But I do have a bread maker now, so that's another
So you don't
story.
need to worry about it. Juggle your heat. If you're doing a fried egg or over easy egg, We don't want too much heat. We don't want it to get really brown. If we want to keep it nice and white, we'll put the salt and the pepper, I won't make you do that again, on the bottom side. Then you can get all the flavor.
On the top side?
Yeah, on the top side now, but will become the bottom side when we flip it. If you don't like to look at all the black pepper, when I was in culinary school, they always wanted us to use white pepper. Not a fan. So this is the approach that I prefer to take, is let's get some good black pepper in there. What we're cooking on right now is a non-stick Teflon coated skillet.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'd be curious, how many of y'all at home are cooking on a lot of Teflon coated skillets?
Yeah.
Probably quite a few.
Yeah. And you should never use a metal utensil on your coated skillets.
Definitely not. And once you start to see this hazing like this, and if you start to see scratches, it's time for this.
No, stay aside, no. Oh, I'm gonna miss her. Oh, that's sad.
This needed to happen for a while.
You waited till we were Facebook Live.
Because it needed to happen.
Oh, that was sad.
So now there's accountability.
Because we use
it starts to get
utensil.
a lot of chemical stuff in the air and in your food, and you don't want to cook it on high heat. So when I was doing this egg, I was literally almost at the lowest setting. So I'm going to slide that, and here's one of the best ways. I get my spatula underneath the egg, and one of the best ways to do the flip without making a mess is pick it out and turn the pan over. And now,
So don't flip the egg, flip the pan.
if you go and flip the egg, what will most likely happen is you're going to smash it down in. It could very quickly break the yolk, and it's all going to go everywhere and create a big mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead I picked it up, I turned the spatula over, and I slowly flipped it.
That's interesting. That's how you make them look so pretty.
So we toss these. Once I feel it's releasing from the pan, since I know I'm going to flash these in the oven. Flash meaning I'm going to put it in a high heat oven for a short period of time.
I'm glad you clarified that because we speak no kitchen language like that. Flash means what? I didn't understand until you just clarified that.
Okay. Sorry, I got uncomfortable again. I thought the marriage conversation was bad enough, but when she's asking me about what does it involve to flash,
I didn't. Okay.
Okay.
You know I didn't know what that meant.
she's sassy. She probably doesn't know what that means. All right, baby. So the squashing stuff is ready down there.
Okay.
If you will flash the eggs in the top oven just for a minute or two.
Flash, that means put them in the oven for a minute.
There's nothing to do.
Warm them up. Warm them up.
Warm them up on a high heat. That's what flash means. It means put it in for a high heat for a short period of time. That's what's happening in restaurants. They're not cooking your food and keeping it warm. For soup, yes.
What do you want?
Short ribs, yes. We can pull that out. Things that are like braised and so forth, yes. But for delicate items, we cook them and then we flash them on high heat. That warms up the outside, but it doesn't overcook the center. All right, so this is going to be nice and ready. The eggs are getting flashed in the oven. I'm heating up this pan, and this one is a ceramic coating. So we talked about when to use non-stick, low heat. Ceramic, good for non-stick, for avoiding food sticking to it, but at a high heat.
Okay.
Now, we don't want to use incredibly high heat because ceramic will eventually get up to 800 plus degrees. But I would never want to do that with a true Teflon coated pan. If you're starting to see fumes come up, there's a problem. So that's what we're doing for middle of the road. In terms of brands, there's so many options. There's like Scan Pan is a good one that's affordable, has several different price points. You can use on those metal utensils. It's really, it's a great approach. And what I'm grabbing right now,
I'm still mourning the loss of my pan.
okay, here's what was happening in the background. This is an immersion circulator. This is Sous Vide Cooking. I'm going to plant the seed, and we're going to have a future class that's on Sous Vide Cooking at like super inexpensive price. Not from us. Like, how can you get into it without having to spend a bunch of money? Lots of ways.
Okay, can we back up for just a second? Because this is really becoming more and more popular. Garth started talking about sous vide 6 years ago that I remember, maybe even earlier, but food foodies have been inquiring more about what is sous vide and how, and now we're starting to hear it really kind of spread. you're on the cutting edge. Just FYI, you can tell your friends you know what sous vide is. So, baby, would you please explain in layman's terms what this is?
A lot of y'all might even know. So
A lot of people don't.
These were some fillets. So beef tenderloin. I usually was going to use sirloin, but honestly, beef tenderloin was on sale for 50% less than normal. One of the grocery stores I went to, Costco, very reasonable. Restaurant Supply or Restaurant Depot, for at least a while, I don't know if they still are, was allowing non-restaurants to go there and shop during COVID. But you can substitute, like I said, I was going to use anything, strip steak, sirloin, ribeye. This was a very inexpensive fillet, and what we did was this machine, you set the temperature for the machine that keeps the water warm and it moves the air around, and you set it to the temperature that you want the steak cooked. So if you left your cookies in that oven at 325 for 2 hours, eventually they'll become 325 and they'll be like on fire.
They'll be biscuits.
If you set the water to 135, the steak will never get over 135. It reaches an equilibrium. Bonus side for people that have stomach problems and worry about getting sick, foodborne illness, you can pasteurize it where it's completely killed everything, or 99+%, and yet it's still juicy. And so this is a way to have a fully cooked steak that's still juicy and red. It's unlike, if you haven't had sous vide before, anything that you might have ever had. And if you don't want to use the vacuum sealer like we did, like the Food Saver would be the brand, you just use a Ziploc bag, put it into the water, that'll press the air out and seal the top. And you drop it in there, and the best part is, all you need to find out is really what the minimum is. So for these steaks, minimum is like 45 minutes. If you left them in there for an hour and a half, they're gonna be the exact same. So for the worst cooks of y'all, if you're terrible in the kitchen, this is gonna make you shine. With some of the most expensive cuts of meat, from fish, chicken, beef, vegetables, you name it. I love it.
It seems a little intimidating because it's like,
That's why we're gonna have a class on it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we're gonna dive into greater detail on a future class on how to use them, because it's so simple. It's basically spend $100, buy one of the devices, listen to some guidance. I'll send you some charts and graphs. They'll just say, hey, if you're cooking beef and it's 1.5 inches thick, here's how long I put it in for: a minimum of 45 minutes, maximum of 2 hours, and then when you take it out, we're just going to do a quick sear, because it's already cooked. So we're going to do a quick sear. If you'll grab those eggs, give me a flash. So I'm searing it now because it was in a bag. So it was cooking through, but it wasn't getting crunchy. I did put salt and pepper on it first. I can tell you there's so much division in the world today. There's so much division, even on sous vide today, which I'd much rather argue about that. So much division on like what's the right way to do it. Really, on sous vide, you can't mess it up. So I also like to sear it on the sides. That caramelization, I won't bore you with science details, but it's called the Maillard reaction. For my side, it's the caramelization, these sugars and proteins. It changes the entire chemical makeup of that portion of the meat. From Amy's side, it tastes good.
I agree.
It tastes good. So
that's all I care.
high heat sear, I'm doing it on the top and bottom, but I'm only doing it for a few seconds because it's already been cooked through.
Smells
So now
good.
we'll do a little assembly.
Okay.
Oh, saved it.
Saved it.
So this could be breakfast, this could be brunch, or this could be an awesome dinner.
Well, I like dinner because it's dinner time.
That's a good reason I like it. Now, let me pull this one on.
Oh, that
I
way.
hit that one with the spatula.
Uh-oh.
Okay, whenever you're cutting meat, you want to cut it at least partially across the grain. So the grain here is running like this. So what that means is I'm going to cut it at a bit of an angle.
Yum. Pretty.
I find like, what's the striation going? Okay, if it's that direction, cutting like this.
Look how tender that is too.
That's why I can hold it on this side of the meat also.
For those of you who are asking about sous vide, I think there's several brands. Is that right, baby?
Yeah, Nova's the one that we use.
Nova's the one that we use, and we have an Amazon page now. So if you jump on, well, I can send you the link if you want it. But if you jump on Amazon and you search Uptown Farmhouse, we have like a whole page of kitchen items that we suggested, and that Nova is on there. I think we get a little, I don't know, 30 cents or something if you buy through our link. But we put a lot of, Garth and I put a lot of different things on there that
she does.
Well, things that we like and that we do use in our own kitchen. So, FYI. Also makes great Christmas presents. I was going to talk about that. So as we're getting into the holidays, and with everything being on back order, shipping, everything is so delayed with shipping. I know a lot of people are going to be jumping early on that Christmas shopping list. So I would suggest if you want to get this for a Christmas present, which is a great idea, especially for somebody that likes to cook, you might want to order it a little early.
Even if it's somebody who
get it.
doesn't like to cook,
yeah,
this is great for them. I mean, for somebody who's like, I cringe the times I have to cook. If they'll spend 45 minute session with us to dive into the sous vide, you'll never turn back. That'll be your go-to. You'll be like, hey, have everyone else bring the casserole dishes. I'm doing the pork loin, the beef tenderloin, the standing rib roast, the side of sand. I'm doing all that. Y'all do everything else.
Alrighty.
So some fresh herbs.
Which were?
Yeah, we used a little basil, a little rosemary, some parsley, and some oregano. You can use whatever you want.
That looks so pretty. Very
little rosemary sprigs, and then out of our garden, we had some basil that started to bolt. So if you see those flowers, that's bad news bears, because that means that your basil's about to disappear. You want to cut it off before it starts to bolt or flower. We'll put those on.
Pretty.
Pretty simple.
Wow, that's gorgeous, baby. Good job. And dinner is done. I mean, how
you just had to take a couple things
wonderful
out of the
is
oven.
that? I love that. Can I turn this fan off because it's rather loud? All right.
One last little thing is we're getting ready for the Q&A. So why don't you team them up for the Q&A, and I'm going to get us ready for my signature final dish.
Okay, we do have lots of questions coming in. Somebody asked, actually, I think I saw several ask. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's see.
While we're doing it, just to let you know what's happening right here. We've got the start of one of my adult milkshakes. Pretty much every event that we do. If you come to one of our farm dinners, if you come to Taste Texas, all of them, to Sub-Zero Wolf, if you want to come buy appliances for me at Gerald, I'll make you an adult milkshake. All of those things, we start with some ice cream, always Texas ice cream. Good friend of ours, or friends of ours, Sean and Cheryl Small, gave me this Lone Elm, this Texas whiskey. He's probably cringing that it's going in the milkshake when I could have just used
I think he'd be okay with that.
a Crown Royal or something and then saved that for myself. Little Bailey's. Creaminess. Maybe not Bailey's. Should have tested that one.
Uh-oh, what
I've not
happened?
had grease on my hands.
Oh. It's been a while since we cracked that one.
I might be cracking. Actually, that's good words. I might actually be cracking it open.
Oh gosh, don't spill on me. Or your shirt.
Well, I tell you what, when that's happening, we'll just use some Frangelica. I'm bound and determined that during this Q&A session, I'm going to get this Bailey's open one way or the other. I just need a little rubber.
Somebody's been challenged.
All right, I got it.
You just needed to loosen it up.
I was waiting for you to
I
just
was
walk up.
thinking about it, but I didn't want to go by yourself.
Okay, so in terms of gadgets, we talked about the Innova. That was the sous vide thing. If you don't have a stick blender, we hardly use, and I don't even have a current working blender because we use this.
We need a current working blender though, because I would really like that.
We use this for just about everything. So I like it because you don't have to worry about wet versus dry. You get to work it in yourself. A lot of times if you have a regular blender and you put too many dry ingredients, could be frozen fruit, could be yogurt is going to emulsify and it's going
Get
to
lots of hearts. I think that means they like that.
get watery. But what I like about the stick blender is that you can really control how much, like if I had too much ice cream
Cleanup
in a
is
regular
easy,
blender,
too.
oh yeah, that
Cleanup
was
is
it. We're
the
just going to
best.
wash that off. Yeah, you know what cleanup is like in a regular blender. So, all right, so we'll make this little uptown farmhousey.
Farmhousey.
Is that a descriptor? A mason jar. If you want to really have your sinuses opened up, these moonshine cherries are wow. I could
I
probably.
never even had moonshine, but I had one of these one time and I really thought whiskers were going to grow off my chin. I was like,
Is that where those
yeah,
came from?
it was the moonshine.
Wow. You had moonshine. Never mind. So keep going, babe.
That's all I gotta say.
I would only add one or two. Apparently that's the reason I'm not getting many in there. And don't add too much liquid because they're pretty potent. We'll garnish that with a little bit of mint out of our garden. And then we'll sip on this while we'll ask questions.
How pretty. I wish everybody was here and I would just pass it around. We could do
That's
an
one thing I
adult
do
milkshake
miss
for everybody.
about Taste Texas was the whole like raise of hands. How many of y'all have done sous vide? How many of y'all are familiar with it? So I guess we'll look back
That
on
is so good.
feedback here.
Yeah,
So we're in
okay.
the Q&A
All right, so we got
section.
Q&A. Y'all ready for this? Okay.
That was
Just,
nice.
just
audio.
reminded me of something I've heard before. All right. Let's see. Okay. I think the number one question we got was, do you have a wedding date? I'm serious. I saw that several times.
I don't know why people would be inspired to ask that.
I don't even.
Sure had nothing to do with the start of tonight's class.
I'm trying to find where there's a lot of stuff
It's
going on
COVID.
here.
We're not supposed to have more than like 4 people in a room.
Amanda was feeling my pain on the trashing of the poor pan that's had its day. It's done. Thank you, girl.
It's a lot less expensive than medical problems later. So
Okay, and the question is, no, we have not set a date. Seriously, there were several questions on it. So no, we haven't set a date.
okay.
But we might.
Well, we'll share with y'all before anyone, except for maybe like parents and kids.
Okay.
Before almost anyone knows.
Here's a question: does cooking sous vide change the texture of the meat?
It benefits the texture as long as. So if you overcook meat in an oven, it'll dry out. If you overcook meat, and I mean by like way too far, like instead of 2 hours being the max, you put it in for 6 hours for beef tenderloin, it'll make it too tender, which doesn't sound like a problem, but it makes it for like really soft meat. So if that's your thing, go for it. But it's your range being from like 45 minutes to over 2 hours. It's pretty forgiving. And then if you were having a delay, you and your guests wanted to enjoy another glass or 4 of wine, then you just pull it out and drop it in some ice water. That'll help keep it from continuing to cook and cool it down a little bit. Then let it sit on the countertop for about 20 minutes. And by the time you've seared it, it's warmed back up again.
Okay, Whitney, our sweet Whitney, wants to know how
Oh,
often
we miss her.
we do miss you, girl. How often do we sharpen our knives? That's a sore subject
That's a
here.
loaded question. So since COVID, especially, and not having farmers markets and whatnot, at least not as many open, and us being able to get our knives professionally sharpened, I finally bit the bullet and bought a high-end but kind of automatic knife sharpener. I can tell you, if you're not used to the whetstone or belts or grinders, it's really better to have it done professionally. And what I started to sign up for, we haven't done yet, is now there are a lot of places, and there have been for a while, but even more so now during COVID, where you just put your knives in a box, wrap them. Some of them will send you what to put them in. And don't just put them in like your gym sock and throw that in like a soft envelope. It needs to be protected.
Who would do that?
It still has gym socks. I don't know.
Little
With stripes on the top. My mom just washed those for me last weekend. No, you just want to wrap them and protect them, and you can send them off. And most of the places guarantee a turnaround of 3 to 5 days. So if you were an active cook, maybe that means you take half of them and send them off. If you're less active cook, for lack of a better term, then maybe just send them all off at one time and just keep one little backup standby.
Okay, another question was, how do you know if your pans are scratched up? And I think that is a really good question.
First of all, know if you have Teflon or not. I don't know if we have...
Oh, that's my foot.
Well,
Can you pull out the one that's going away?
I'll pull out this one.
Don't throw it away, please.
This one's going bye-bye tonight, too.
No!
I'm glad you asked.
This is a terrible class gone bad.
So, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. Y'all can see it. So, do you see those scratches? That's why I don't cook with this pan, and that's why
I do.
This pan.
Oh, this is sad.
Oh, it was over here. We needed to have an intervention.
This is a burial. This is burial.
So basically, on that side, some people will buy those. They're inexpensive. Go to Target, Walmart, any of those places. You can probably buy one for $15 or $20. That's fine. Don't use metal utensils on it. Don't cook it on high heat, and replace it about every year or two. Or buy one of the ceramic pans, pay $40, $60, $80, and have it for almost a lifetime. It'll slowly degrade, not in a bad way where you're going to get sick, but where it becomes less non-stick. And get a brand that's legit. Do some research. The ones that have very small followings are made overseas in some parts of the country. Some of those use a variety of different chemicals, even in the ceramic. You want to avoid those. But if you're going to like a main retailer and you're looking up, maybe before you go in, what are some good brands? We mentioned a couple of them. You're going to be okay.
Okay, good question. Garth, why white wine and which white?
So, first of all, my teeth don't become red during dinner, right? So when we do these farm dinners, if I'm drinking red wine, and my goodness, half the time it is so blazing hot that the thought of me drinking like a big bold cab when I'm already sweating, that just makes me cringe. So my red's for after. White, if I'm drinking a white just like while we're working at dinner and we're sweating it out, typically drinking an inexpensive Pinot Grigio. But for the rest of the time, my favorites are some of the blends, red blends. Amy and I are particularly fond of a lot of the Orange Swift stuff, the Heights Cellars that we did the rosé last week. Big fan of their Cabernet. Day in, day out wine. We've got a bottle of Silver Palm open tonight. I mean, if it's a weeknight, we're not drinking the fancy stuff. But if you want to send it to us, you can.
Yes, true. Okay, here's another good one from Sweet Jennifer. I love you, Jennifer. Okay, she wants to know, this is a great question because I feel your pain. What is your go-to kids at home feeding the crew meal? So normally for us, it'd be like on a weekend when we got all the kids that are not living in the house coming on over. What would be our go-to?
I mean, I think the burger one from episode 1 from this series is one where we got Jackson covered, or hey, plain and dry.
Reagan.
We got Reagan covered,
he loves
much more adventurous, and we've got us covered where I'm like, well, if it's one of those thin like crunchy burger patties, I'm like, is there a burger patty on there? Because I got so many toppings that it's just falling everywhere. So I think that's a good staple. And those thin burgers are ones that quick, fast sear, flash in the oven right when you're ready to serve. You don't have to worry about them getting dried out because they're so thin and crunchy already. So that's probably an easy one. I mean, I'd love to be able to say it's stuff like this, the butternut squash, but I think you kind of have to negate out like what are people not going to eat and then build up from there, and then add sauces, toppings, and vegetables that the adults and the more sophisticated palates are going to enjoy to really elevate it a little bit. And that could be even taco night. Like doing my chili garlic aioli on a taco is going to take your normal old El Paso taco seasoning and
bring it up a
flour
notch.
Tortilla, putting a little aioli in there is going to be a little creamy add-on. So it's more about, to me, what can you add on to make it a little more fancy?
What brand of ceramic?
So this is Chantal Ware, Houston-based company, German lady. In fact, she's the first female cookware business owner in the United States, and has made some incredible product. I love it. In fact, I did recently see, I guess we're talking about promos, and we don't get anything from this, and they don't sponsor our show. I haven't spoken to her in probably 15 years.
Yet.
But yeah, but they're running like I think a half off on their website for a pan very similar to this one. But if you're wanting more mainstream, Scan Pan is probably the way to go. They've got 3 series and they have more to do with handles and appearance than the actual function of it. And you can use metal utensils. Green Pan's a good one too. They discourage you from using metal utensils. You can, you just want to be gentle about it. And when I read warnings, I mean, common sense, don't ever take your knife and cut something in the pan. I mean, unless you got a really bad knife and a bad pan, that's totally fine. But otherwise, don't cut food in the pan.
Mama Blackburn wants to know, where did you get those cherries? Those moonshine cherries. We'll bring you some.
We'll bring you some. Those have been here for a long time. There's no risk of them going back because there's enough alcohol in there that'll...
Where did you get them?
Those are from Specs.
Okay.
You can find them in a lot of places, but those were from Specs. I'd love to make some that are not as potent, and you can occasionally see some that are more for artisanal, like cocktails that are not the bright red. They're the dark cherry. I'm blanking the type of cherry, but you can get those from a lot of higher end retail, and including Specs probably does as well.
KR asked where you were putting your where was the cleanup going? She thought it was falling on the floor. See, I would have thought the same thing, but there's a trash can right down there to the left.
Kathy, louder?
Huh? What did you say?
Is this the louders?
Yes.
All right, Kathy, so it actually changed. So during the cooking, we went from the sink where stuff was getting dumped to the pull-out trash can, but when I realized I was going to have to throw as many pans away as I was going to need to, I pulled the trash can from the pull-out while Amy was drinking wine and talking and put it down here, so it just conveniently disappears. We have a small island, so I had to make the most of it. So kind of behind the scenes, I had the stick blender plugged into the opposite side of the island, wrapped around the island, and shoved into a drawer so that we could try and make it happen. So it's not quite the same set that we had on Taste Texas with a 25-foot wide island.
Those were the days.
But it's also a lot more intimate and fun to have y'all joining us here.
Yeah. Okay, here's a really good one, and y'all might want to know about this as well. Air fryers. So those are all the rage right now. What about them?
They are, honestly, I haven't gotten into as much. In fact, I might be posting my dad's email address because he uses his all the time.
He is amazing at the air fryer.
He's great with the air fryer. The only reason that we don't is that we tend to cook a higher volume of food. And even the large air fryers are good for 2 to 4, maybe 6, depending on the food. And while we sell at Gerald Company the new ovens that have the air fry technology, when you have that large of an oven, it's not going to be the same performance as those countertop air fryers where you have such small space and it's blowing so hard. So it's hard for me to really give you a lot of input on it. I've eaten a lot of my dad's food from it. It's impressive the way you're able to use that forced air technology to get a caramelization that you couldn't get in a regular oven.
I've seen some really good recipes coming out of the air fryer.
But somewhere between bake and air fry is convection. You're not going to get the same performance, but a lot of the things that are happening to your food on an air fryer are happening in a small amount when you're using convection. So I can tell you that, yeah, I'm not a tremendous resource for air fryers yet. That's probably going to be a future show of ours when we get one, and we're going to walk through it with y'all from our start. So we'll see how many folks want to go grab an air fryer. We'll grab one too, and I'll do some research. Amy will do some research, do some initial recipe testing, and then when we go live, we'll be ready to not have it down perfect.
I think we got to just do that all together.
We just have to have a few things that we roll through, unless we buy 4 air fryers.
Sean said that your adult milkshake should be wiggly or jiggly, and it's actually both. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the
Let me check it out, Sean.
Okay, let's see. I think I've covered most of the questions. I love your comments, and I love that y'all are interacting with something about a knife sharpening guy. So awesome. I'll be reading up on that as well because we may want to jump in and find out who you use.
A lot of new resources from y'all.
We used somebody locally and it was okay, but I don't know that we would probably use that again. So, and
if you're watching tonight, we're not talking about you. if we brought our knives to you recently and you're watching this little cooking class, it wasn't you, it was the other guy.
No, it was the other guy. Okay, so next week is our last week And we want to do something kind of fun and different. Something just flew by my head. We want to do something fun and different. We want to do a cook-along with y'all. Would that be fun? So I want to do a cook-along, and Garth is all on board with this. So what we want to do is we're going to email you the list of ingredients. So make sure I have your email. And if I don't have it, just shoot me your email, amy@uptownfarmhouse.com.
And we're going to make it easy ingredients, and we're going to give alternatives. This is not a scavenger hunt for you to have to go to 4 grocery stores.
This will be fun and easy.
You don't need to go to some fancy place. This is going to be reasonably priced ingredients. We decided not to do it as a box where we ship it off. Something we're looking at for the future.
Don't tell them what we're making, though.
Yeah, we're not telling you what we're making.
It's a surprise. You gotta email me.
But we are looking in the future the possibility of doing the boxes. We just couldn't control it right now, especially with the temperature for shipping things. I just didn't feel comfortable doing where we send you the box. So instead, it's actually easier. You get to run to your local grocery store, pick up the stuff that you like that's comparable, and then you cook along with us.
Yeah. So I think the last week we're going to go out with a bang. We're going to have fun together. We'll do Facebook Live again. We won't do Zoom, so we won't be able to see you cooking, but you can follow along with Garth, and I'll be here just
cooking,
watching, and having fun. So, okay, baby, the chicks need to go out and play before it's completely dark. And
priorities.
We're going to say night-night.
All right, good night, y'all. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to having you back. A lot more fun things planned, so stay tuned, and we will see you cooking along with us. I should add one little caveat to that, too. You know what? If you don't want to cook along with us, if you're just here for the entertainment and you're eating Jack in the Box tacos, I love you. Like that, I just had Jack in the Box tacos.
That sounds so good.
Yeah. I just made filet.
Oh, we're going to have that tonight. Oopsie.
And yeah, don't feel obligated to cook along. It's not going to be like a stall thing. We're still going to roll through it. It's just going to be approachable. So those of y'all that want to join us for it, we'll have a great time. Those of y'all that want to just sit there, drink a glass of wine, and see what happens next, that'll be just as entertaining.
And we will post this recipe so that you won't forget. Hello, fall.
And I made it through without the pull bumper and
Hallelujah.
without bleeding.
Y'all have a good night.
Y'all.
See you next week.